So with a fantasy football season, here's a few quarterbacks I'm going to add on waivers heading into week 2. The first guy is Jameis Winston of the New Orleans Saints. So the Saints here, they came out and they sent the message here versus the Green Bay Packers in this one, winning 38-3. And Jameis Winston, what a fantasy day he had on this day. 148 passing yards, 5 passing touchdowns, and 37 yards rushing. So right now, Jameis Winston, a big fantasy day with 39 points on the day here, and he's available right now in 57% of fantasy leagues. And I know this New Orleans Saints offense doesn't have many big weapons, but right here, a lot of guys stepped up in this game for the Saints, and a lot of guys in these other waiver wire position videos I'm going to mention as well from the Saint team. So Winston, he looked great versus the Green Bay Packers. His deep ball was working. He was playing smart football, not taking too many chances. And the big thing for me out of this as well is he sustained long drives, the ball over at all as well. And right now, next week, he's got a pretty decent matchup at the Carolina Panthers that gave Zach Wilson, the rookie of the New York Jets, 258 yards and 2 touchdowns. So I think next week at Carolina is a pretty decent matchup for Winston. And right now, if you need a backup quarterback, or if you're in a 2-quarterback league, or you just stream guys each and every week, which I know some people do that, I think Winston's a decent add. And right here, he's a big add this week at quarterback. The next quarterback's Mack Jones of the New England Patriots. So the young rookie Mack Jones, he looked pretty decent in his first career start, obviously, here for the Patriots. 281 passing yards and a touchdown. He didn't make many mistakes, but he didn't take a lot of deep shots as well in this ball game versus a pretty stout Miami Dolphin defense. Patriots lost this ball game 17-16 in a low-scoring ball game. But next week, Mack Jones and the Patriots are at the New York Jets, and that's a pretty good ball game on paper once again, after we saw Sam Darnold have a good ball game versus former team, the New York Jets. So right here, Mack Jones, he looks poised, and he won the quarterback starting position for a reason, in my opinion, over Cam Newton. This guy's more in the pocket, obviously, quarterback. So far, looks like he makes pretty smart decisions for a rookie, and he's got a good matchup, like I mentioned, next week at the New York Jets. And right now, he's definitely worth an add in deeper leagues more than anything, but he's available in 74% of fantasy leagues. The next quarterback's Teddy Bridgewater of the Denver Broncos. So Bridgewater, pretty surprising ball game versus the New York Giants he had, and he looked pretty good in week 1 with 264 passing yards, 2 passing touchdowns, and 19 rushing yards. So Bridgewater, we know he gets out of control sometimes, slinging the ball anywhere. But in this ball game at the Giants, solid fantasy day. And now he's got another pretty good matchup next week in week 2 at the Jacksonville Jaguars. So right here, Bridgewater, I know he lost Jerry Jeudy in this ball game to a high ankle sprain. But the Broncos, they got a decent amount of speed and players on the offense. And versus a pretty decent New York Giant defense, in my opinion, he went out there and he played good football. And we'll see what he does next week at Jacksonville. But if you need a quarterback for next week, I think Bridgewater is a decent add. And right now, he's available still in a whopping 89% of fantasy leagues. The next quarterback's Jared Goff of the Detroit Lions. So Goff here, he was throwing all day, early and often versus the San Francisco 49ers. And the Lions, they almost made one heck of a comeback in this game here. So Goff finished the game 338 passing yards, 3 passing touchdowns, 14 rushing yards, and 2 two-point conversions. So Goff here, he was getting the troops in line, and he looked pretty good, and he was hitting DeAndre Swift a lot out of the backfield as well in this game. So Detroit, I know they're going to be one of the worst teams in all of football, but for fantasy football, we're going to see a lot of garbage time and a lot of yards put up, I believe, this season here by Jared Goff, and he's got a decent target at least in T.J. Hawkinson at the tight end position. So next week, he versus the Green Bay Packers in Green Bay. I know Green Bay, they're going to be fired up after getting blown out versus the New Orleans Saints next week. But like I mentioned, a lot of garbage time I could see in this game at Green Bay and throughout the season here for Goff. And right now, he's available in 93% of fantasy leagues. And the 5th and final quarterback I looked at on waivers this week here in week 2 is Carson Wentz of the Indianapolis Colts. So Carson Wentz, he played in this one. He took a lot of hits as usual, even one shot that I couldn't believe he got up and kept playing the rest of the ball game. He finished the day with 251 passing yards, 2 touchdowns, 23 rushing yards, and a fumble loss. So right here, he don't have many weapons, is Carson Wentz obviously here, but he's another guy that I could see his team trailing a lot this season here. Next week, he's going to be trailing a lot versus the Los Angeles Rams, and a lot of garbage time scoring, I believe, will happen here for Carson Wentz. But right now, he's fifth on my priority list for a reason, with the tough matchup versus the Rams next week. And right now, he's available, Wentz, in 85% of fantasy leagues. So right here, if you're in a deep pinch or a deep league for a quarterback next week, or you just want a backup, I don't think Carson Wentz is the worst ad in the world. But right here, I would prioritize him 50 on the list. So that's a few quarterbacks I would look to add on waivers here heading into week 2 of the fantasy football season.